2 years after denying my raise request, my old firm paid my new firm millions to rebuild the same governance system they once said was replaceable. The strange part was not the money. It was the silence in the room when they realized who designed most of it originally. Nobody looked at me directly during that first restructuring meeting. Not the managing partner. Not legal. Not even the board advisor sitting near the window reviewing compensation files. They already understood something uncomfortable before the meeting started. The system they were trying to recover had never existed fully inside their reports. It existed inside preparation habits, inside client memory, inside invisible structure nobody respected until it disappeared. 2 years earlier, I was still working late nights inside that same firm. 45 years old. Senior associate title. No equity. No voting power. But somehow every major proposal eventually crossed my desk before clients saw it. I built briefing files, risk summaries, decision-maker maps, meeting preparation sequences, revenue tracking notes, competitor positioning. Nobody called it strategy officially. The partners preferred another word. Support. One managing partner liked introducing me to new hires as the person who keeps the coffee flowing during bid season. People usually laughed politely. I usually kept organizing the room. That was the pattern. The louder personalities entered the client meetings. I built the structure underneath them quietly enough that nobody noticed until something failed. At the time, I still believed consistency eventually earned recognition. That belief lasted longer than it should have. The year before I left, the firm closed nearly $5 million in advisory revenue tied to accounts I helped prepare directly. Not alone. Consulting never works alone. But the preparation systems mattered. Clients trusted discipline. They trusted continuity. They trusted people who remembered what executives promised 6 months earlier. Most partners underestimated how much trust lived inside preparation work. Then compensation review season arrived. I requested a 9% raise. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. I brought revenue contribution records, client retention notes, proposal influence timelines, clean documentation. The managing partner reviewed the file for less than 3 minutes. Then he pushed it back across the table. He said the firm needed to stay realistic about support-side compensation expectations. Support side. That phrase stayed with me longer than the raise decision itself. He offered 2% instead, then explained how fortunate I was to have long-term stability at my age inside the industry. Nobody else in the room challenged him. Not human resources. Not the compensation director. Nobody. The meeting ended 12 minutes early because another partner needed the conference room. I carried my own file back to my office afterward. Nobody stopped me in the hallway. Nobody asked how the meeting went. Around 6 that evening, while reviewing client briefing notes alone, I received a recruiter email from a competing advisory firm. At first I assumed it was generic outreach. Then I read the second paragraph carefully. They specifically referenced 3 bids their firm had lost against us during the previous 18 months. And they asked a question my own firm never once asked me. Who is actually building the strategic preparation behind those accounts? If you have ever watched leadership ignore the people holding the system together, subscribe now. Because this story only becomes more expensive from here. I ignored the recruiter email for almost 2 days. Not because I was uninterested, because loyalty distorts judgment slowly, especially inside firms where people confuse endurance with respect. The recruiter followed up Friday morning. Short message. Professional tone. No pressure. They asked if I would consider a confidential conversation outside regular business hours. I almost deleted it again. Then another partner stopped by my office carrying a printed proposal draft. He dropped it onto my desk without sitting down. Client review Monday morning. Need the executive summary tightened. Also clean up the risk framing before legal sees it. No greeting. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. I reviewed the document after he left. The proposal contained 3 strategic positioning ideas I built earlier that month during preparation meetings nobody invited me to officially. That happened often. Partners talked. I listened. Then I organized the structure afterward quietly enough that ownership blurred. By then, I understood something uncomfortable about the firm. The people generating visibility received recognition. The people preventing mistakes received dependency. Those are not the same thing. Friday evening, I met the recruiter inside a hotel lounge near downtown Chicago. Neutral location. Standard practice for lateral recruitment discussions. The competitor partner arrived 10 minutes later. Early 50s. Calm. No performance energy. That stood out immediately. Most consulting executives sell confidence first. He started with observation instead. He said their firm kept losing final stage bids against us despite having stronger industry specialists. At first they blamed pricing, then branding, then presentation chemistry. But eventually they noticed something else. Our proposals anticipated objections before clients raised them. Decision-maker concerns appeared addressed in sequence. Meeting transitions felt unusually disciplined. Risk exposure language stayed consistent across departments. He looked directly at me after saying that. Then he asked if I designed the preparation architecture personally, not the presentations. The architecture. That distinction mattered, because almost nobody inside my own firm understood the difference anymore. I answered carefully. I coordinated most of the preparation systems supporting the accounts he mentioned. He nodded immediately, like he already knew the answer before asking. Then he said something that changed how I viewed my own career. Your competitors usually understand your value before your management does. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. No dramatic recruiting pitch. No manipulation. Mostly operational discussion. Client continuity. Governance discipline. Preparation sequencing. Internal accountability. Things I cared about. Before leaving, he made the actual offer. 25% salary increase. Leadership authority over client advisory preparation systems. Direct involvement in governance design. And a long-term path toward equity partnership. Not guaranteed. Structured. Transparent. That word stayed with me afterward. Transparent. My own firm avoided transparency constantly. Compensation logic. Client attribution. Preparation ownership. Revenue contribution. Everything important became vague the moment recognition affected power structures. Late Sunday night. While preparing another proposal for partners who still viewed me as support staff, I opened an internal client feedback archive I maintained privately over the years. I started matching client retention comments against preparation records. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Several major accounts repeatedly praised the exact systems nobody inside leadership officially valued. And one client comment appeared again and again across multiple years. Your team always seems unusually prepared before difficult conversations begin. Monday morning, the managing partner forwarded another meeting request to my calendar. Compensation follow-up. Unexpectedly, legal was included this time. The compensation follow-up meeting lasted less than 20 minutes. Legal never spoke. That told me everything before the managing partner even started. He thanked me for my long-term contribution to the firm. Then he explained the leadership group reviewed my request carefully. Carefully usually means no. He repeated the same language from the previous meeting. Title alignment. Compensation structure. Market expectations. Different words. Same outcome. Then he added something new. He said increasing my compensation beyond the approved range would create confusion around role hierarchy internally. That phrase interested me more than the raise decision itself. Confusion around hierarchy. Not contribution. Not revenue. Not client retention. Hierarchy. I asked one question after that. Would the firm consider reevaluating the structure tied to strategic preparation work? The managing partner smiled politely. Then he said preparation support was already reflected within my current compensation band. Preparation support. That was how they saw it. Not strategic architecture. Not client continuity. Support. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Nobody shook hands. Legal collected the printed compensation file before leaving the room. I noticed that detail immediately. Usually employees kept their own review copies. Not this time. Back at my office, I opened the recruiter offer again. Then I opened something else beside it. A private archive I had maintained quietly for years. Client preparation systems. Proposal sequencing models. Risk anticipation frameworks. Governance notes. Decision-maker preference mapping. Nothing confidential illegally. Nothing unethical. Just accumulated operational intelligence developed through repetition and discipline. The strange part was realizing how much of the firm's consistency depended on systems nobody officially acknowledged existed. Around 3 that afternoon, a senior partner asked me to join a client preparation call unexpectedly. Large manufacturing account. Potential multi-year advisory renewal. During the call, the client asked a difficult governance question related to executive accountability during restructuring. The room stalled briefly. Then one of the partners looked toward me automatically. That happened often during difficult moments. Like muscle memory. I answered the question carefully. Structured escalation pathways. Transparency benchmarks. Partner review sequencing. Compensation disclosure safeguards. The client immediately relaxed afterward. You could hear it in the silence. After the call ended, the same partner thanked me privately near the hallway. Then he said something almost accidental. You always know how to stabilize these conversations before they go sideways. That sentence stayed with me the rest of the day, because stabilizing conversations was exactly what the firm refused to recognize structurally. They relied on it constantly, but they framed it as personality support instead of strategic infrastructure. That evening, the competitor partner called directly for the first time. No recruiter, just him. He said something simple before discussing numbers. You are describing governance architecture, not support work. Nobody inside my firm had ever used those words before. Governance architecture. The conversation became more specific afterward. Leadership authority. Client advisory systems. Preparation governance. Partner track transparency. Not promises. Structures. Before ending the call, he asked whether I believed my current firm truly understood what would happen if someone stopped maintaining the preparation continuity behind their largest accounts. I looked across my office at another unfinished proposal waiting for review. Then I answered honestly. No, I do not think they understand the difference between visible leadership and invisible stability yet. The competitor partner paused briefly after that. Then he said something that unsettled me more than the compensation offer itself. That misunderstanding is usually what makes firms vulnerable right before client migration begins. The competitor invited me to their Chicago office the following Thursday. No recruiters this time, just leadership. The building felt quieter than my firm. Less performance, fewer glass walls. Nobody seemed interested in looking important while walking between meetings. That difference became noticeable immediately. I spent most of the afternoon with their advisory leadership group. Not interviewing. Discussing systems, client continuity, governance pressure, preparation discipline. One partner asked how I handled executive misalignment before major client presentations. Another asked how I tracked decision-maker trust deterioration across long consulting cycles. Those questions surprised me, because they described actual operational work, not personality traits, not support behavior. Work. At one point, they showed me 3 proposals from my current firm that had defeated them during competitive reviews. They highlighted recurring structural patterns quietly. Risk sequencing, preparation layering, stakeholder anticipation, escalation timing. One partner leaned back in his chair afterward. Then he said something difficult to forget. Most firms think clients by confidence. Sophisticated clients usually by predictability. That sentence explained my entire career better than my own leadership ever had. Late in the meeting, they presented the formal offer package. 25% compensation increase. Leadership authority. Transparent performance metrics. Equity partner development path. Structured governance participation. Nothing emotional. Everything documented. The room stayed calm while discussing it. That calmness affected me more than aggressive recruiting would have. No one there tried convincing me I was lucky. No one framed recognition like charity. On the flight home, I reviewed my old firm differently for the first time. Not emotionally, structurally. I started noticing how much invisible labor leadership extracted from people without defining it clearly. Preparation systems, client memory, proposal continuity, relationship repair, expectation management, all treated like background support instead of strategic infrastructure. That realization changed something important internally. I stopped waiting for recognition. Instead, I started measuring leverage. Over the next several days, I built a private documentation file for myself. Revenue attribution, proposal contribution timelines, client continuity records, preparation architecture examples, governance recommendations ignored previously by leadership. Nothing stolen, nothing confidential improperly retained. Just evidence. Years of evidence. The deeper I organized the records, the clearer the pattern became. The firm benefited from ambiguity. As long as invisible contribution remained undefined, leadership could absorb the value upward without redistributing recognition downward. That was the real system, not accidental, structural. One evening, while preparing another executive briefing package after normal hours, I noticed something strange inside a client email chain. A manufacturing client had written directly to one of the senior partners earlier that week. The client specifically requested the same preparation, discipline, and governance clarity they associated with prior advisory work. The partner responded confidently, but attached materials looked rushed, incomplete. The sequencing logic was missing. For the first time in years, I saw a client noticing the difference before leadership did. That moment unsettled me more than the compensation decision itself, because it confirmed something dangerous. The stability clients trusted was never actually embedded inside the institution. Too much of it depended on undocumented preparation behavior carried quietly by individuals. And leadership still believed that behavior was easily replaceable. 3 days later, I requested one final meeting with the managing partners before making my decision. I brought a 42-page evidence file with me. The managing partners scheduled the meeting for Friday afternoon. 4 people attended: managing partner, compensation director, legal counsel, and me. The atmosphere felt unusually controlled before anyone spoke. Printed folders already sat at each chair position. That detail mattered. Most internal review meetings inside the firm operated casually. This one did not. I placed my evidence file on the conference table without opening it immediately. 42 pages. Revenue attribution patterns. Proposal continuity records. Client preparation systems. Meeting sequencing structures. Governance recommendations. Client retention notes tied to preparation discipline. Nobody touched the document at first. The managing partner opened the conversation carefully. He said leadership appreciated my dedication and institutional knowledge. Institutional knowledge. Interesting phrase. Because knowledge only becomes institutional when institutions actually protect it. Otherwise, it remains personal labor disguised as loyalty. I walked them through the file slowly. Not emotionally. Just evidence. $5 million in revenue support influence over 3 years. Repeated client references to preparation consistency. Proposal success patterns. Risk anticipation records. Decision-maker tracking systems. Nobody interrupted while I spoke. Legal took notes constantly. That detail unsettled me slightly. The compensation director avoided eye contact almost the entire meeting. When I finished, the room stayed quiet longer than expected. Not dramatic silence. Analytical silence. The managing partner finally leaned back in his chair. Then he said something revealing. The issue is not whether your contribution matters. The issue is maintaining compensation consistency across title structures. There it was again. Hierarchy. Always hierarchy. Never strategic dependency. I asked one final question. If these systems disappeared tomorrow, how would the firm maintain continuity across the accounts tied to them? The managing partner answered immediately. We have talented people across the organization. That response told me he still did not understand the actual risk. Because invisible maps do not transfer automatically through staffing charts. They transfer through accumulated pattern recognition, trust memory, preparation instincts, relationship sequencing. Most organizations realize this only after continuity breaks publicly. The meeting ended professionally. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody insulted me directly. That almost made it worse. Because the dismissal remained structurally polite. Before leaving the room, legal asked whether I planned to retain copies of any internal preparation frameworks after departure. Departure. Interesting word choice. Not if. After. I answered carefully. I only retain personally developed organizational methodologies compliant with contractual obligations. Legal nodded once after that. No further questions. Back in my office, I stared at the city skyline for almost 20 minutes before touching my laptop again. Then I drafted my resignation letter. 2 sentences. Professional. Precise. Final. I scheduled delivery for Monday morning at 8 o'clock. That weekend, something unexpected happened. A long-term manufacturing client forwarded me an email accidentally during an internal reply chain. One sentence stood out immediately. The preparation quality feels noticeably less coordinated lately. Nobody inside leadership had mentioned client concern yet. But clients were already detecting structural instability before the firm recognized it internally. That realization changed the entire emotional weight of my decision. Because I suddenly understood something much larger than compensation had already started. The firm was not merely underestimating one employee. They were overestimating how stable their client trust system actually was. And once sophisticated clients begin sensing inconsistency, the damage rarely stays isolated to one account. I submitted my resignation Monday morning at exactly 8 o'clock. No speech. No emotional explanation. Just 2 sentences and a transition timeline. The managing partner called less than 7 minutes later. His tone stayed controlled. Too controlled. He asked whether another firm was involved. I answered honestly. Yes. Long silence after that. Not angry. Calculating. He asked whether compensation was the primary factor. That question interested me, because compensation was never the entire issue. Structure was. I explained that I no longer believed the firm understood how much strategic continuity depended on undocumented preparation systems. The managing partner responded carefully. You are overestimating how dependent the organization is on any one individual. That sentence confirmed the decision completely. Because I never believed the organization depended on one person. I believed leadership failed to understand where continuity actually lived. There is a difference. The next 3 weeks felt strangely procedural. Transition meetings, file handoffs, proposal reviews, client continuity summaries. People became unusually polite afterward. That happens often once departure becomes real. The same partners who ignored preparation systems suddenly wanted detailed explanations about workflow logic. Some questions surprised me. How do you sequence governance escalation notes before difficult renewal calls? How do you track executive trust deterioration across long engagements? Why do certain clients receive different preparation formats? The answers were never complicated individually. The complexity came from accumulated judgment developed over years. Pattern recognition rarely transfers through documentation alone. That was the real risk leadership still underestimated. My final Friday at the firm felt quieter than expected. No farewell lunch. No celebration. Mostly closed-door meetings and controlled hallway conversations. Near the end of the afternoon, one senior partner stopped outside my office carrying a client binder. He stood there for several seconds before speaking. Then he asked whether I believed clients actually noticed preparation quality differences at that level. I looked at the binder in his hands first. Wrong sequencing tabs. Incomplete governance summaries. Missing escalation notes. The client would absolutely notice. Sophisticated clients always notice structure eventually. They may not describe it technically, but they feel inconsistency immediately. I answered carefully. Clients usually notice stability before leadership does. The partner said nothing after that. He just nodded once and walked away. The following Monday, I started at the new firm. Different atmosphere entirely. Preparation systems were discussed openly there. Governance architecture had ownership. Client continuity work had measurable value. Nobody treated strategic discipline like invisible administrative support. Within 6 weeks, I noticed something uncomfortable happening quietly across the industry. Former clients from my old firm began requesting introductory conversations with our advisory group. Not dramatic departures. Not emotional exits. Exploratory meetings. Governance reviews. Comparative discussions. The pattern remained small initially, but highly sophisticated accounts almost never move suddenly. They move gradually after confidence weakens repeatedly. One evening, while reviewing a potential transition opportunity tied to a manufacturing client I knew extremely well, our managing director paused during the meeting. Then he looked directly at me. This account trusted your preparation systems more than your former firm realized. That sentence stayed with me afterward, because by then, the first signs of internal instability had probably already started spreading quietly through my old firm. The dangerous part was this. I still did not think leadership understood where the instability was actually coming from. About 4 months after my departure, the first major renewal officially moved away from my old firm. Publicly, leadership blamed pricing pressure. Internally, that explanation did not survive very long. The client transition review documents eventually circulated quietly across industry contacts. One phrase appeared repeatedly: inconsistent preparation quality. That wording mattered. Clients rarely criticize strategy directly during exits. They criticize reliability first. Meeting readiness. Governance follow-through. Decision continuity. Escalation clarity. Trust usually erodes operationally before it collapses financially. At my new firm, leadership tracked the transition carefully. Not aggressively. Professionally. Nobody celebrated the loss publicly. That also mattered. Mature firms understand client movement creates industry reputation risks for everyone involved. Still, the pattern became harder to ignore over the following months. 3 additional accounts requested governance reviews. One multinational manufacturing client delayed renewal entirely, pending advisory restructuring discussions. Another requested expanded preparation oversight before approving a new engagement phase. Each issue sounded isolated individually. Together, they formed something larger. Preparation instability had started becoming externally visible. The strange part was hearing former colleagues describe the situation incorrectly through private conversations. Most still believed the firm simply needed stronger presenters, or more aggressive partners, or faster sales cycles. Very few understood the actual breakdown. The invisible map was fragmenting, not the visible hierarchy. One evening, a former colleague called me privately after a client meeting. We had worked together nearly 9 years. He sounded exhausted, not emotional, operationally exhausted. He described preparation meetings becoming longer but less effective. Proposal revisions increasing repeatedly before client delivery. Partners contradicting each other during governance calls. Clients requesting clarification more frequently. Then he said something that stayed with me afterward. Everybody suddenly realizes how much coordination used to happen automatically. Automatically. That word explained everything. Invisible systems always look automatic until continuity disappears. 2 months later, industry rumors started circulating about internal restructuring pressure inside my former firm. Nothing catastrophic publicly, just signals, partner disagreements, compensation review disputes, governance audit involvement, delayed promotion cycles. Institutional stress rarely announces itself dramatically at first. It leaks through procedural friction. Then something happened I never expected this early. Our managing director asked me to join a confidential review meeting regarding a potential advisory engagement opportunity. The client requesting the engagement was my former firm. Not for litigation, not for competitive analysis, for governance stabilization. The room stayed unusually quiet after that announcement. One executive finally summarized the situation carefully. They believe institutional continuity weakened after multiple undocumented preparation systems deteriorated simultaneously. Undocumented preparation systems. That phrase almost sounded surreal hearing it spoken formally after years of dismissal. I reviewed the preliminary briefing materials slowly afterward. Revenue leakage indicators. Client trust instability. Internal accountability disputes. Preparation inconsistency patterns. The deeper I read, the clearer something became. Leadership still believed they were dealing with isolated operational problems. They had not fully realized the deeper issue yet. The firm never actually lost one employee. It lost the hidden architecture connecting preparation discipline, governance continuity, and client trust across the organization. 3 days later, my new firm officially received the advisory engagement request. And my former managing partner specifically asked for me to join the restructuring team personally. The first restructuring meeting took place nearly 2 years after my resignation. Same city, different side of the table. I arrived early with our governance review team. Nobody from my former firm entered the conference room casually anymore. Everything felt measured. Legal attended immediately. Board representatives joined remotely. Outside consultants filled seats that once belonged to internal leadership staff. Institutional stress changes room behavior long before financial statements reveal it publicly. The managing partner looked older than I remembered. Not dramatically, just operationally worn down. Stacks of governance audit folders covered most of the table near him. Client retention reports, compensation review findings, preparation consistency assessments. The same categories leadership once treated like secondary administrative functions. Nobody mentioned the past directly during introductions. Professional firms rarely do. Instead, we discussed stabilization frameworks, client continuity recovery, preparation governance redesign. At one point, a board advisor asked how undocumented preparation systems became concentrated around individuals without institutional oversight. The room became unusually still after that question. Not defensive, careful. The managing partner answered first. He described the issue as a historical communication gap around operational responsibilities. Communication gap. Interesting phrase. Because by then, everyone in the room already knew the problem was much deeper than communication. The audit findings made that impossible to deny. Over the next several hours, our team reviewed governance breakdown patterns carefully. Proposal inconsistency. client trust erosion, preparation accountability failures, compensation opacity, leadership dependency on undocumented labor structures. Every category connected back to the same invisible issue. The institution had extracted strategic continuity from individuals without formally protecting, measuring, or structurally acknowledging the systems carrying it. That was the real collapse, not my departure. The audit already proved that before the meeting even started. That realization became fully clear during the afternoon review session. One board advisor opened a confidential timeline summary prepared months earlier during internal governance review. The document showed leadership warnings existed before I resigned. Client preparation concerns, compensation transparency risks, proposal continuity exposure, operational dependency alerts, multiple warnings, multiple years, ignored repeatedly. The room stayed silent after the timeline appeared on screen, because everybody understood the same thing simultaneously. Leadership had not merely underestimated one employee. They had ignored documented structural risk while continuing to benefit from it financially. That was the moment the emotional center of the story changed for me permanently. Until then, part of me still believed the situation resulted mostly from personal dismissal. It did not. The system itself rewarded invisibility as long as profitability remained stable. Only failure forced visibility afterward. Near the end of the meeting, legal distributed revised governance compensation agreements for executive review. Transparency clauses, preparation attribution requirements, escalation accountability standards, structured contribution documentation. The managing partner reviewed the documents silently for several minutes before signing. Years earlier, the same leadership group dismissed those concepts as unnecessary complexity. Now external advisors, board oversight, and client pressure required them formally. Before leaving the room, the board advisor looked toward me once more. Then he said something quietly enough that only part of the table heard it clearly. Most institutional failures begin long before the collapse becomes visible externally. The dangerous part is how profitable they still look in the middle stages. And for the first time since my resignation, nobody in leadership tried disagreeing with that statement. 3 months after that restructuring engagement, the old firm completed its first full governance reset. No announcement, no public confession, just new documents, new approval pathways, new compensation rules, new client preparation standards that finally assigned ownership to work leadership once treated as background labor. That was how institutional karma arrived. Not with shouting, with signatures. The managing partner remained inside the firm for a while, but his influence changed. People stopped accepting vague attribution language in compensation meetings. Client preparation work received formal review weight. Strategic continuity became measurable. The word support disappeared from several internal role descriptions. That part mattered more than most people would understand, because language controls value before money does. If work is named incorrectly long enough, people begin accepting the wrong price for it. I did not attend every restructuring meeting after that. My team handled most of the implementation work. I reviewed frameworks, approved governance models, joined only when my history with the system actually mattered. The first time my old managing partner signed a preparation attribution clause, I felt nothing dramatic. No victory, no anger, no satisfaction sharp enough to call revenge. Just a quiet recognition that the cost had finally moved to the correct side of the table. They once denied 9% because acknowledging my value would have disturbed their hierarchy. 2 years later, they paid millions because ignoring that value disturbed their clients. That is the part most firms never understand. Internal unfairness does not remain internal forever. Eventually, clients feel it. Not through speeches, through missed details, through weaker preparation, through meetings where nobody remembers the promise made 6 months earlier, through governance gaps that make trust harder to renew. I became an equity partner at my new firm the following year. The announcement was simple. No dramatic applause, no emotional speech, just a formal vote, signed documents, and a seat at the table where contribution was defined before politics could distort it. That mattered, not because of the title, because the structure finally matched the work. I still prepare before difficult client meetings. I still build decision maps. I still review risk language line by line. The difference is simple now. Nobody calls it coffee. They call it infrastructure. Years earlier, I thought recognition was something leadership eventually gave to loyal people. I was wrong. Recognition without structure is temporary. Value without documentation is vulnerable. And loyalty without leverage becomes an asset other people price for you. I did not destroy my old firm. I did not steal clients. I did not punish anyone. I simply stopped donating invisible architecture to people who needed it but refused to name it. The market named it for them. The board measured it. The clients priced it. And eventually, the same firm that would not pay 9% had to buy back the system it never bothered to understand. That is the quiet truth of corporate life. If your value only lives in your effort, they can call it support. If your value is documented, structured, and attached to outcomes, they have to call it leverage.